I've long since believed that doing things changes things. Doing nothing keeps things exactly as they are. And the Everything Wrong with Comics series isn't a bad series, but it's a quintessential example of not really doing anything, just kind of sitting around and complaining. And I never wanted this channel to be a negative channel. I never wanted it to be a place where people are just like, man, I don't want to go to Comics Explained because all he does is just complain about things. He's just upset about things all the time. I feel like if I've got a gripe, surely there's a solution for it. And if it's not easily found, then maybe it takes a little bit of digging. Maybe it takes a little bit of imagination to locate. But once that solution is found, it can present itself as extremely valuable. Maybe I have no business doing this. I don't know, but I just want to throw my hat in here and I want to offer my own take on how to fix all new, all different Marvel. And some people will say it's not broken, but you can look at the sales of Marvel's comics. You can literally track them since the launch of all new, all different Marvel. The issue number ones sold well because they're number ones. Number ones always sell well. But going into the future of story arcs, as we got into the issue number 3s and number 4s and 7s and 8s, the numbers were just dropping down steadily, just consistently falling continually. And there's a reason for that. A lot of people feel like they were duped with all new, all different Marvel. A lot of people felt like they were told this is going to be all new, all different Marvel. And when it got around to crunch time, when it got around to put up or shut up, it wasn't all new and it wasn't all different. It was just a continuation of what we'd seen before. And maybe it was because Marvel got cold feet. Maybe it's because Marvel didn't want to reboot. Maybe it's because they never intended to reboot. They just wanted to drive popularity for all new, all different Marvel by calling it all new and all different. I have no real idea what was going on behind the scenes. But what I do know is that as a person who's been reading comics for 20 years, I can't help but be a little bit upset. I can't help but be a little bit angry because for me as a comic book reader, and for those of you guys out there who are watching this video right now who are avid comic book readers, and for those of you guys who are casuals and don't really understand where it is that we're coming from, we're passionate about comic books because they are an intrinsic part of our life. The enjoyment, the love that we have for comics is the same love that surgeons have, for cutting people open, I guess. Saving lives. It's the love that teachers have for educating a generation of kids. It's the love that gamers have for playing RPGs and first-person shooters and winning tournament money. It's something that we enjoy. And we all got into it for different reasons. I've talked about this before. People got into comic books for a whole lot of different reasons, but the fact remains that whatever that reason may be, we are passionate about comic books. And if there's anything we don't want to see, it's the comics that we love failing, just not achieving the level of success that they have been, not giving us the kind of good storytelling that we like, that we enjoy. It's not to say that we're entitled. It's not to say that we believe publishers owe us something. It's that we've seen a lot of different changes over the course of Marvel Comics, and they have a rich history. And it seems with all new, all different Marvel, a lot of that rich history is being thrown away. So what I want to do in this video is again, I just want to dip my toe in the water of this. I want to start with Spider-Man. I want to start with all new, all different Spider-Man. As it stands right now, Peter Parker, when all new, all different Marvel was launched, he became the Tony Stark of the Marvel Universe. And to be honest, it worked. It was cool. It was an interesting story. It's a short-term story, but it's an interesting story. The reason why I say it's short-term is because of how I envision Peter Parker, because how I see him in the all-new, all-different Marvel landscape. Assuming, for example, that we don't change anything Hickman did. Assuming, for example, that the incursion still happened, and that things weren't rebooted, so to speak. There were no new number ones. There was no fresh start or anything. We just kind of saw a continuation. The first thing you do is you issue an issue number 0 for Peter Parker. You get people caught up on his legacy. You get people caught up on his history. You don't just leave them hanging. And that was a problem with the start of all new, all different Spider-Man. It was like picking up with the next issue of the last run. There was no real explanation. There was no real analysis. There was no jumping off platform for new readers. It was just, hey, either you understand what's going on in his comics or you don't. And if you don't, well, then that's just your problem. You literally had to go back and read Superior Spider-Man in order to understand Horizon Labs, Max Modell, all these different things that were significant in the life of Peter Parker. And so my vision was this: issue number 0 covers all that stuff. But instead of making Peter Parker the head of Parker Industries, you follow up with the end of Superior Spider-Man. Parker Industries is just kind of the thing that was fledgling, but then it died out. And instead, you make Peter Parker the head of Horizon Labs. For those of you guys who don't know, Horizon Labs was a think tank of the smartest people, the smartest young people in the Marvel Universe. It was kind of like Reed Richards' Future Foundation. And it was headed up by a guy named Max Modell, who was extremely intelligent, but he was kind of an icon for Peter Parker. Peter Parker looked up to him as a technological genius, as someone to aspire to. With all new, all different Marvel, you pass that torch. You have Max Modell say, hey, Peter Parker, look, like I've gotten married. I'm starting the next chapter chapter of my life, you are now going to be in charge of Horizon Labs. Peter Parker can still be Spider-Man that way. But one of the big issues right now is that Peter Parker just really cannot be Spider-Man, just because of the fact that he is a public figure. In the comics at this moment, we have a guy named Hobie Brown, who's Spider-Man in his stead. Granted, Peter Parker is Spider-Man occasionally, but people don't really read Peter Parker comics to see him be a billionaire. People read his comics to see him be Spider-Man. And that's where the other half of the equation comes into play. The fact that Hobie Brown is Spider-Man right now takes away from the Spider-Man title, because people don't usually know who Hobie Brown is. And in fact, unless you've been reading Marvel Comics hardcore, you have no clue who Hobie Brown is. For those of you guys who don't know, he was a street-level villain turned hero called the Prowler, and he was a C-list character at best. Put it this way, his claim to fame, his biggest moment in the history of Marvel Comics, aside from right now on All New, All Different Marvel, was during the event of Civil War. He was the first superhero to be arrested after the deadline for the Superhuman Registration Act passed, and he refused to register. He was the first casualty of the Civil War conflict, so to speak, in terms of being hauled off to the negative zone. That was his claim to fame. That was his biggest moment. And Dan Slott chose to make him the new Peter Parker. That's not what you do. You look to the legacy of Spider-Man. You look to the legacy of the character. In 2000, Marvel came along and they created the Ultimate Universe. And the Ultimate Universe was designed to be a reimagining of the mainstream Marvel Universe. It was designed to take the continuity that we knew, that had been around since, the 1940s with the Captain America, but achieved its most notable success in the 1960s with the Avengers and Fantastic Four and Thor and X-Men and so on and so forth. And it was designed to update those superheroes for the modern times, modern sensibilities, to give the generation of today something to read, or I guess the generation of that time, something that they could relate to. But things were wildly different. Nick Fury was the original super soldier. Captain America was the second iteration of that. Mutants came into existence because Canada wanted to form their own superhuman program. They experimented on Wolverine and discovered a gene that, when activated, grants superpowers. Thus, mutants were born. There were a lot of huge changes, but one of the most notable changes in the realm of Spider-Man came with the character of Miles Morales, who was created by Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli, and he was designed to be an updated Spider-Man. He was not designed to be Peter Parker. Peter Parker did exist in the Ultimate Universe, and there was a storyline called The Death of Spider-Man, and Peter Parker was killed off to make way for Miles Morales to take his place. And the way that Bendis and Sarah Pichelli did this was incredible. Peter Parker was a huge influence on Miles Morales, even if only insofar that, Miles saw him as a hero. But when Peter Parker died, Miles Morales took up the mantle of Spider-Man, and he encountered resistance from those individuals who knew Peter Parker and said, "You have no business wearing this costume. You don't need to do that. You're dishonoring the legacy of Peter Parker. Do not become him. Become something else." Eventually, people grew to accept him, but it was very much like the dichotomy between Wally West and Barry Allen after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And this resonated great with the character of Miles Morales because he was a kid from a part of town that was less than savory. He dealt with his own personal struggles day in and day out. There was a lot of build-up to his character. The issue is that the Ultimate Universe was not nearly as popular as the mainstream Marvel Universe, because when people think of Wolverine, they don't think of him as being the origin of mutants. They think of him as just being a guy who's been around for a long time. He's got adamantium claws, and he's part of the X-Men, and he's in love with Jean Grey. When people think of Captain America, they don't think of him as the second super soldier. They think of him as the original super soldier. He fought against Hitler during World War II. He fell into the English Channel. He was frozen for 20 years. They brought him back in the 1960s, and he became part of the Avengers. Because of this, Miles Morales was relatively popular in certain circles, but he was nowhere near as popular as the mainstream Spider-Man. But when Jonathan Hickman started writing the events of All New, All Different Marvel, when he started writing the events of Secret Wars, when we believed that Marvel was going to be rebooting their entire continuity, Miles Morales was made an intricate part of the story. You could not go through Secret Wars without knowing who Miles Morales was. He walked rank and file with Peter Parker. When you learned about how the Beyonders were defeated by the combined efforts of Dr. Doom and Doctor Strange and Owen Reese the Molecule Man, you learned that alongside Miles Morales. And there was actually a really funny moment when Miles Morales gave Molecule Man a hamburger, or gave him a cheeseburger. Because of that, Molecule Man, when reality was restored to normal, basically brought Miles' family back, which is a whole nother aspect of his character. But you can look at the numbers. When All New, All Different Marvel launched and Miles Morales got his own solo series, it rose to popularity. Again, it was not nearly as popular as Peter Parker, but he was selling better than he was during the Ultimate Universe line of stories. Now, whether or not this was due to the fact that it was a solo Spider-Man book, or because it's centered on Miles Morales, is simply a number I don't have. We'd have to go around to each individual reader of that comic and ask them individually, why did you buy this? And that's a task that nobody would be interested in doing. But the fact remains that when Miles Morales came back, he was just kind of shuffled off in no man's land with his own solo story. You don't do that. Miles Morales has the potential to be as popular, if not more popular, than Peter Parker simply because of his relatability. Because there are a lot of kids from urban neighborhoods who could identify with Miles Morales. There are a lot of kids who look at the relationship between Miles and his father, the fact that his father put so many restrictions on him but does it to keep him safe, that kids could resonate with. You don't get this opportunity because Miles is off fighting his own adventures, which is fine. But in my mind, in my vision, You don't make Hobie Brown a stand-in Spider-Man for Peter Parker. You make Miles Morales a stand-in Spider-Man for Peter Parker. That way, Miles Morales gets the exposure to fans that wouldn't normally read his comics. His popularity is beefed up, but you also see probably the most significant version of Spider-Man in his publications. Not only that, because of the fact that Peter Parker is head of Horizon Labs, he's a mentor for Miles Morales. That was a concept that was explored in the Ultimate Comics. And in fact, there was a story whereby Peter Parker from the mainstream Marvel Universe met Miles Morales in the Ultimate Universe and officially gave him his blessing. And so Miles Morales went forward as Spider-Man. You bring these two together. You have them fight side by side. Not only that, you use this series to lay the groundwork for Civil War II, which I'll talk about in a later video. But one of the biggest issues that you would face here is, well, if you've got a story where you have two Spider-Men fighting at the same time, why do villains, how would Dr. Octopus stand a chance? How would the Jackal, or how would Vulture, or any of those guys? How would Venom or Carnage? Those guys would be pummeled easily. Well, sure, if you kept them the way they were, but you update the villains. They become a little more intelligent. They adapt to two Spider-Men, and they become just as much of a threat as they were before. But again, this is just kind of my 2 cents. I'm just sort of spitballing here. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I think that'd be a great direction to take the Spider-Man series. It would literally just be a Miles Morales, Peter Parker team up, and it would be a mentor kind of situation. It wouldn't just be them fighting together. So you get to see the interpersonal relationships between the two of them. You get to see Peter Parker looking at Miles Morales as a protege, and you get to see Miles Morales looking at Peter Parker as a mentor, but they would butt heads. They wouldn't agree on everything, which would lay the groundwork for Civil War II, which I would see that as kind of a story of the old superheroes versus the new superheroes, the young superheroes. Again, like I said, I'm just kind of throwing some ideas, but let me know down in the comments section what you guys think about this. I'm kind of curious. I'm curious to see, how you guys feel about this sort of idea. But anyway, we're gonna wrap this video up, and yeah, if you guys are new to this channel, feel free to hit the subscribe button, become part of the Rob Corps, drop a like, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.